Hello. In this video I want to look at an article by Barney called Looking Inside for Competitive Advantage. It appeared in the Academy of Management Executive in 1995. Now this classic article is best seen as a build on his earlier 1991 article, Firm Resources and Sustainable Competitive Advantage, which went more deeply into the resource-based view theory. We cover this in another video. The 1995 article mostly focuses on how you assess if a resource or capability, or indeed a bundle of resources, a competency, will give a firm competitive advantage. The big difference between the 1991 and 1995 articles is the switch from assessing resources using the earlier VRIN test and moving to the VRIRO test. As we'll see, the change is combining inimitable and non-substitutable, the I and the N in VRIN, into the I in VRIRO, and then adding the question of organisation, the O in VRIRO. While the 1991 article does go deeper into the underlying assumptions of RBV, the 1995 article provides many useful examples that demonstrate how VRIRO can be used. Barney starts his 1995 article by pointing out the need to move on from SWOT. While Porter's 5 forces and strategic group analysis provide rigorous and applicable approaches to look at a firm's external environment, that is only part of leaving SWOT behind. The internal aspects of the firm are just as, possibly more important. Consider the cases of Walmart and Southwest Airlines, who both face very challenging industry environments and yet still deliver high financial performance. This is where the resource-based view comes into its own. To be fair to Porter and developments in what could be called the activity-based view of the firm, the allocation of Porter to external analysis and RBV to internal is no longer appropriate. They are both useful ways to generate insight, and as they come from different perspectives, they should both be used in strategic analysis and decision making. Barney states that understanding is gained by focusing on the resources and capabilities of the firm. Importantly, note here it is not activities or strategies. It's things that the firm owns, or perhaps more accurately, possesses. This is a fundamental difference from Porter's views, and to get the most value out of either as analysis tools, we should be careful to stay with the right units of analysis, resources for RBV, activities for Porter. Yes, in that you are ignoring an important aspect of the firm, but you will pick it up when you do the other analysis. For Barney, resources and capabilities can be financial assets, debt or equity, physical assets, machines, buildings, facilities, or human assets, people with certain experience or skills. They can also be organisational assets used by the firm, so a relationship with a key customer, the firm's culture, or the formal reporting structure, control systems, and perhaps compensation policies. These are all things that the firm has, not what it is doing with them. To see if any resource or capability provides competitive advantage, managers must address 4 important questions. The question of value, the question of rareness, the question of imitability, and the question of organisation. Barney looks at each of these questions in turn. So starting with the question of value, do a firm's resources and capabilities add value by enabling it to exploit opportunities and/or neutralise threats? For many, the answer is yes. For example, Sony's experience in designing, manufacturing and selling miniaturized electronic technology allows it to grasp product opportunities in video cameras, TVs and displayers, etc. Importantly, note Barney's emphasis is on their experience. He's focusing on the specific capability, not, say, manufacturing activities. If you like, it is a specific competence in miniaturized electronic equipment manufacture, comprising a bundle of assets, knowledge, expert staff, machinery that work together to make this happen. Other firms, however, maybe have failed to recognise and respond to market changes, and the question of value may be answered with a no. Barney gives examples of the steel manufacturer USX and Sears as missing significant market changes. An important responsibility of strategic managers is to constantly evaluate whether or not a firm's resources and capability continue to add value despite changes in the competitive environment. By answering the value question, managers link the analysis of internal resources and capabilities to the external analysis. A firm's resources are not valuable in a vacuum. They are only valuable because they exploit opportunities in the environment in which they operate. Barney then moves on to look at the question of rareness. A resource may be valuable, but if it is possessed by numerous competing firms, then it is not going to be a source of competitive advantage. Instead, valuable but common resources and capabilities are only sources of competitive parity. This does not mean that valuable and common resources are not important. Such resources are essential for a firm's survival. So the critical issue in assessing competitive advantage is how many competing firms already have these valuable resources. Turning now to the question of imitability, where a resource or a competency is valuable and rare, for example, Walmart's point-of-sale data system, which at the time competitors did not have, that resource gives the firm at least a temporary competitive advantage. Clearly, if a competitor has an advantage and, say, they capture valuable customers because of it, you are going to try to match it. Such imitation can occur in two ways: duplication and substitution. Duplication is where an imitating firm builds or acquires the same kind of resource. In substitution, substitute resources have the same strategic implications, so deliver the same value as the original. But if competing firms face a cost disadvantage in imitating these resources or capabilities, that will turn the resource into a source of sustainable competitive advantage. But be careful, just being expensive doesn't necessarily mean you end up at a cost disadvantage. If the resource is central to competitive advantage, affordable funding may well be available. Barney says that the reasons a cost disadvantage may occur in imitation can be grouped into three categories: the importance of history in creating that resource, the importance of numerous small decisions in developing, nurturing and exploiting resources. In the 1991 article, this is referred to as causal ambiguity, and the importance of socially complex resources, social complexity. Starting with historic circumstances. As firms evolve, they pick up skills, abilities and assets that are unique to them. What they gain reflects their particular path through history. So the resources and capabilities represent the firm's unique personality and experiences. To illustrate this, Barney tells the story of Caterpillar. Prior to the Second World War, the firm was just one of several medium-sized entities in the heavy construction equipment industry, struggling against fierce competition. But just before the US entered that war, Caterpillar was awarded the contract as worldwide supplier to the US military, and then given support to build a worldwide service and supply network. After the war, Caterpillar continued to own and operate this network, and it is central to their ability to deliver any part to any part of the world within 2 days, a key component in them becoming the dominant firm across most categories of heavy construction equipment. For competitors trying to duplicate Caterpillar's network, the scale and cost involved would mean they'd probably need some kind of government support, which is today very unlikely. Interestingly, Komatsu is one firm that has competed effectively against Caterpillar, but they have done this by trying to build greater reliability into their equipment rather than duplicate Caterpillar's global supply and servicing network. So, unique historic circumstances can mean a firm acquires resources and capabilities, but that opportunity no longer exists for others. Turning to the importance of numerous small decisions, strategic managers and researchers are often enamoured with the importance of big decisions and projects as determinants of competitive advantage. IBM launching the 360 series of computers, or Apple the iPhone. However, more frequently, advantage depends on a long series, often thousands, of small decisions. The firm's capabilities are made up of many small components and changes that are invisible to other firms, and often even the owning firm has a difficult time describing what the source of their advantage is. Firms seeking to copy don't have to copy just a few resources, but thousands, even hundreds of thousands. There's an interesting link here to Porter's activity system view, although Porter is looking at the whole business unit rather than at a specific competency or capability. The final reason Barney gives that makes a resource or capability difficult to copy is that the resource might be socially complex. Some physical resources, computers or robots say, are very complex, but if you want to obtain them, you only need to purchase them and take them apart and then duplicate. Patents actually provide little protection, and even where they do, eventually they run out. On the other hand, socially complex resources and capabilities, so organisational phenomena like reputation, trust, friendship and culture, are far more difficult to copy. A resource that is valuable, rare and socially complex is likely to give the firm sustainable competitive advantage. For example, Sony's capability in miniaturization is partly the result of teams inside Sony's ability to work together across product and functional boundaries. So, an essential component with high social complexity. It means that while competitors may easily imitate, say, a Sony TV, it is difficult to imitate Sony's ability to produce a stream of new electronic products. Individual resources or capabilities that are valuable, rare and inimitable potentially gives the firm competitive advantage. Note, you can't rely on one resource being valuable while another inimitable. Competitors just copy the one that is valuable and ignore the rest. So an individual resource or capability has to meet all three requirements. To realise the potential advantage, an organisation has to also be organised to exploit its resources. This takes us to the final part of the VRIRO framework and the question of organisation. The firm must possess complementary resources that mean it gains the value from the potential advantage. Such resources might include formal reporting structures, control systems, and compensation policies. For example, if Caterpillar had not implemented a global reporting structure, global inventory system, and compensation policies that encouraged its employees to work around the world, the potential for advantage after World War II may not have been realised. In contrast, Xerox, in its Xerox PARC Research Centre, developed many of the features that are now common to personal computing. The computer mouse, Windows-type software, and laser printing. But Xerox did not have the organisation in place to take advantage of these resources. Many senior managers were not even aware of the developments, and once they were, Xerox's bureaucratic product development process prevented these developments from being brought to market. Having stepped through the VRIRO framework, Barney then uses the examples of the Cola Wars and of Apple Macintosh to illustrate its use. In the battle between Coke and Pepsi for market share, Barney demonstrates that particular strategies cannot be the source of advantage unless they are based on different resources that are V, R, I and O VRIRO. It is the resources, not the strategy to use them or the market share obtained, that is the basis of advantage. In the second example, Barney looks at whether Apple in the 1980s had a competitive advantage that led to the success of their Apple Macintosh machine. He identifies the user-friendliness of their software as a big difference to other PC manufacturers, and then proceeds to consider if this was valuable, rare, and inimitable. It's important to recognise that Barney is being specific here and is looking at Apple's capability to build user-friendliness into their computers, not as a generic product difference or general descriptor. Clearly, at that time, Apple's capability to create user-friendly software was valuable and rare compared to other firms producing DOS-based software. He then looks at whether this capability was imitable. The Apple hardware and software is a result of teams of software and hardware engineers working together at Apple's facility, and among them there was trust, enthusiasm, commitment and teamwork. So social complexity. This was also rare, as in others, such as IBM and Microsoft, teams specialised on manufacturing hardware or on producing software. There was also a big difference in the cultures. The mindset in IBM at the time was dominated by technical specialism, while in Apple, computers were seen as toys for everyone or a household appliance. Such mindsets are again socially complex, slow to change, and thus difficult to imitate. It was only with the introduction of Microsoft Windows that Apple lost this advantage, and Barney notes that this was then Apple apparently started looking for new resources and capabilities and began to cut prices. Barney finishes the article by reminding us that sustainable competitive advantage cannot be obtained just evaluating the external environment. Rather, it depends on the unique resources and capabilities that the firm brings to its markets. To discover sources of competitive advantage, managers must look inside for those valuable, rare, and costly to imitate resources and then exploit them. So, What do we make of J. Barney's article? Well, it is the classic introduction to the famous Vriro test, a hugely important tool in our armoury as strategists. The article also provides a largely straightforward description of each of its elements. We do, though, need to be careful in a few places to make sure we stay true to the assumption Barney bases his thinking on. Firstly, it is very important we stick with looking at resources, the things a firm owns or possesses. Don't be tempted to bring in activities, strategies, or vague descriptors. Barney himself is less clear in his example in the Cola Wars and of Apple than perhaps he could have been in this. Rather than blurring this focus on resources, if we want to look at activities or strategic moves, we are better deploying a different theory in a separate stage of our analysis. There are also some common mistakes made in the application of Vriro. In particular, we do need to make sure that we are applying the full Vriro test to each resource. Unless two resources are intrinsically linked, it is no good if one is valuable and the other is inimitable. A competitor only needs to copy the valuable one. More positively, a major strength of Barney's article is the extra level of depth it gives on why resources may be difficult to imitate. It is not just if a resource or capability is expensive to acquire or build, it is if acquiring it puts the competitor at a significant cost disadvantage. Here Barney's reasoning on historic circumstances, numerous small decisions and social complexity are well worth using in your analysis to decide if the inimitability test is met. So a very valuable article that is well worth thinking about. Perhaps then digging deeper into the RBV theory by watching the video on Barney's 1991 article. Thank you for watching.